What's up, guys? Welcome to a live lesson. Today we've got an electric drum set here, and it is the TD30, one of Roland's brand new kits.
Yeah.
And I would like you to play a little intro song. Is that cool?
We're going to, yeah. I don't know if we're getting any audio from it, though.
Ah.
Let's see if we're all set up yet.
Oh, here
There
we
it
go.
is.
Nice. Awesome, man. That's a cool little jam.
Yeah.
Guys, I hope you're enjoying it so far with the Roland TD30.
It's a lot of fun. And actually, what I was just playing to, if it sounded really repetitive, it was actually just a loop. So you can actually add your own little loops on a little USB stick.
Oh, I know.
So-
We got a ton to talk about today about that. So again, welcome everyone. We've had a ton of people asking us over the last couple months, when are you going to do an acoustic, or sorry, instead of an acoustic kit, when are you going to have a lesson with an electric drum set in there? And I've been trying so hard to get everything to line up, and this week seems to be the week.
Here we are.
Sean's been kind enough to use his contacts, bring in a Roland drum set for us. So thank you very much. This is a TD30, one of the newest models that they made.
This is their newest flagship model. Yeah, this replaced the TD20.
Yeah, it's an incredible kit. A little expensive. Obviously, it's not one that a lot of people are going to go out and grab the top of the line electronic drum set.
No, this is meant for someone who is most likely going to be using it live on the stage as well. A lot of guys will buy an electronic kit and it sits in the corner, but as you can see, this kit looks great from the front. So this isn't just a sit in the corner kit. This is a put it on the stage, show everyone.
Very cool, very cool. So the whole idea for this lesson, guys, we're going to talk about the benefits of electronic drum set, tricks and tips on how to practice, some things that you do want to do, some things you do not want to do. But the main goal is just to give you the main idea that, you know, you can practice and get very far on the drums just with an electric kit. And in fact, you, for the most part, correct me if I'm wrong, but you practice on an electric kit.
I do, yeah. I've been living in condos and now a townhouse, which is pretty much the same thing. And yeah, I've been practicing on an electronic kit for about 5 years now. I'd love to practice on an acoustic kit, and I do sometimes, but the bulk of my practicing is done on an electronic kit because I can practice whenever I want, and no one ever tells me to stop practicing.
Yeah, that's awesome.
It's great.
And the chops and the skill you have is incredible. So that's why when we thought about who to do the lesson on an electric kit, who better else but someone who practices on it regularly. So you guys have questions about this? I know there's going to be quite a bit of questions regarding electric kits. It's going to be more of a discussion, kind of a lesson today, although we are going to talk and have a lot of playing, I hope.
Yep.
But please get your questions in, guys. If we have to go a little later, we will, because I know there's going to be tons of questions just based on the forums and the responses that we've got just saying we're doing a lesson on this. So I'm pretty sure there's going to be a ton of questions. That being said, Sean, you want to just dive right on in? I mean, first off, the basic benefits to an electric and acoustic kit. So
basic benefits, electronic versus acoustic. I mean, number one, obviously, there's a volume knob. You can turn the volume down, and you can even just use headphones. So you don't need to have sound ever really, except for just the sound of us hitting the pads. Now, mesh, obviously, is going to be quieter than rubber. As you can kind of notice with an electronic kit, when you're hitting the cymbals, which are rubber, they're going to be a little bit louder than the mesh, which absorbs the impact a little bit more. But other than that, they're really, really quiet, and it's a great practice tool. And it's so much more interesting than just sitting with an actual practice pad, because there's no actual sound. There's no real feel of playing drums. It just feels like you're practicing rudiments on a book, right? So. Electronic drums are really, really good to kind of inspire you to practice a little bit more. That's what I've always found anyway.
Do you want to just quickly show, I mean, I'm sure most people have already heard it without, but can we turn the volume down on this and just have the mic from your lapel so we can hear what it sounds like?
Yeah, let's
because there is some sort of volume to it.
I don't want to mess with Victor's volume settings here.
Audio Guru, am I already throwing you for a loop? Yeah, let's do it. Take it down there. Just play. Bring it in and out, Victor, if you can. That'd be great, so you can kind of hear the difference. And we're going to leave these mics on so you guys can hear. Because with mesh heads, it's quieter than rubber pads.
Definitely.
And I know a lot of people, I used to have an electric kit where my landlords could hear it. And it was the worst. So, I mean, maybe mesh is the way to go. But just play it a little bit so you can hear the volume. Still hear the volume.
Here we go. Now, one thing you might have noticed is the kick sounds a little bit loud, but that's actually the pedals bottoming out. Someone's modified this pedal. I think Jared modified it a little bit, and so it's actually bottoming out. It's normally not that loud.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, a couple people in the chat are also first asking, and we'll get all this kind of stuff out of the way. How much does this kit run? How much does the module itself run? And does this do the same kind of thing that like a cheaper $900 kit would do?
Okay, well, I'll answer the second question first. No, it doesn't do... It'll do more than what the $900 kit does. So this kit, as it is now, I'm not sure what the American street price is, but in Canada it goes for about $8 grand. So it's going to be pretty similar in the States. The brain itself, its predecessor, the TD20, was going for about 25. So I think this one's probably going for more like 28 or 29 for the brain.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
But the brain is this is the powerhouse. I mean, these are really nice pads. But all of the calculations, and I say calculations because of the modeling technology, everything takes place in here. This is a little miniature computer, and it's calculating where on the head you're hitting, and so what sound it should reproduce. It's calculating, for example, on the cymbals. Since I'm hitting it on the edge, it's saying, okay, I'm going to give it an edge hit. But if I do this, it says, oh, he's doing a swell, I better make it sound more like a swell. So it's behavior modeling. It's actually, making all these complex little calculations in real time to kind of create a more realistic drumming experience. It's pretty cool.
Cool. Sorry to interrupt. I just had a lot of questions about that pop up, so I'll let you continue.
Yeah. No, that's that right there. Where were we?
Talking about different sounds, the big basic benefits, and like if you're going to buy an electric drum set, do you go and buy, or if you're going to go buy a drum set, do you choose an electric one over an acoustic one?
That's a very common question, and my answer is both. You have an electronic, or you have an electric guitar, you have an acoustic guitar. Different situations, both useful. Same with drums. An electronic drum set is going to let you practice a lot more. It's going to let you have a whole lot more sounds. Like this thing's got like I think 80 80 preset kits built into it, and then plus looping and all sorts of things like that, which you wouldn't get with an acoustic kit unless you added electronics to it. So they're two different beasts. That's why it's always interesting to me when people will say, like, I can't play on electronic kits. Like, you know, I just can't do it. It's not the real thing. Exactly, it's not the real thing. It's not really meant to be the real thing. It's meant to give you kind of a similar experience, but it's kind of like a wrench versus a whole toolbox. You're going to be able to do what you can do with the wrench, but it's going to be different, and you're going to be able to do a whole lot more things with it at the same time.
Cool.
Yeah. So this is such a broad subject. I'm just trying to think of where we are.
Yeah, well, let's talk about the
Where we're
little
going.
different sounds and all that, because we have a whole, like I said, a whole PDF here of different things to talk about. Mesh versus rubber pads, built-in metronome, many different sounds, customizable. So yeah, why don't you?
Why don't you give me that list?
Yeah, sure. There you go, buddy.
Yeah. So any electronic kit is going to have a lot of different sounds. That's one of its really strong points. Some of them in the lower price ranges of $700 to $1,000 are going to be like 25 to 50 kits, and then the higher end ones are going to be 50 to 100 kits. This one has, let me just scroll through it really quickly, but I think I said it was 80, and I think it is 80. 80, and then we have 20 user kits. So basically, you can have, there's 80 different preset sets, and then you can also combine those for 20 more, which is pretty cool. So I'm just going to cycle through a bunch of different sounds so you can kind of get the picture if you've never done this before at a music store. You'd never really have access to a kit that sounds like that normally. That's why it's kind of cool to have an electronic set.
Totally, yeah.
Or there's some melodic kits on here. Or djembe, world percussion. Kind of funky. Brushes, which you can actually use brushes on this. Just a lot of fun.
What was that one called? Vision, is it?
Vision. So again, you couldn't be able to, you couldn't do that with an acoustic kit. And so this isn't an acoustic kit, and it's not meant to replace it. It's just a whole new set of tools. Again, we got tons of things, like you can start patterns. So you can do a lot of different things. So that's, you have a lot of different sounds. You have a lot of different, usually play-along songs too. So if we dig into the patterns on here, and any electronic kit generally, with the exception of a few, is going to have 20 to 40 to 50 to 60 built-in play-along songs. So this one's got a ton. Some of them are actually associated with the kits that trigger sounds, but let's...
And the one thing that's so nice about having built-in play-alongs with any kind of electric kit, you can change the tempo of the songs that you're playing. So if you're really trying to learn, I know just last week we did a whole week on Latin drumming, and if you're trying to learn some Latin chops, or you're trying to learn a samba or bossa nova, you actually speed it up and slow it down, and you have access to practice that within a style. And
they're all very genre specific too. So if you want to get better at your shuffle or whatever, right? Pop 16. Let's try that. That was the wrong kit for the song. Let me just change the kit back.
Certain kits have triggers right when you hit the cymbal, and that one actually brought in a completely different play-along loop to it.
Don't do that. Do this. So this is better. again, that's just another example of a loop. So if you want to get good at, I think this is supposed to be like 16-year-old pop music. So if you wanna go where the money is and play some pop, find a loop and practice it to your heart's content. Shuffle pop.
Now we also have built-in metronome on here, which is to me is I think one of the smartest features. Depending on what kit you have too, there's also I know it's the new Rolands per se. I'm not going to say all of them have it because I know all of them don't. But there's a way you can plug it into your USB, and you can actually plug it into your computer and see exactly where your notes are falling, and see where you're having troubles with, see where your faults are, and all that kind of stuff. But even just having a built-in metronome as it is, I mean, it's a hassle for a lot of drummers when they're at a kit to get a metronome that'll bleed through their ears enough so they can hear it.
Yeah.
So having it on an electric kit, I mean, it's brilliant.
And a metronome that's powerful enough that you can do presets. Some of the other kits, I'm not sure if this one has it. This is a pretty big brand, and I haven't totally delved into everything that it has to offer, but I know the TD15 and the TD11 in specific actually have coaching functions. So it'll actually give you a visual cue so you can watch to see if you're a little bit behind the beat, with the beat, ahead of the beat, and it'll grade you. So it's a really great way to, again, it's a great practice tool, and it's a great way to sort of gauge how you're improving, and if you're improving, or maybe if you're not improving and you need to start. So, and actually, yeah, we'll go to the next song, and we will add a metronome into it, since it's got the built-in metronome. So if I play it. There it is.
Callum Reese's angry metronome.
That voice is hilarious. But it actually comes in handy if you're playing something like odd time signature and you're like, I'm not sure where the 1 is and where the 7 ends. So here's our metronome. Again, almost every electronic kit is going to have one this in depth, so you can change your time signature. This one's 4/4. Let's try 5/4.
1, 2, 3.
Change the voice
4,
though.
5, 1.
There you go, a nice beep. And maybe change it to 8 notes. One, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Right? So basically, any electronic kit you buy, it's going to have that built in, and it's a great practice function.
One of the questions that we get a lot when people are deciding what pack to get, or if they're just starting on the drums, they say, oh, well, I noticed on Drumeo, or I noticed on Drumming System you guys use an acoustic kit, but I only have an electric kit. Is that going to work for me? Obviously it's going to, but what do you have to say about that? People who are concerned that they might not be able to pick up the lessons the same being on an electric kit to an acoustic.
It's actually, I work at a music store, so it's a really common question. People will say, like, I think that I need to get an electronic drum set, but is it going to be the same as an acoustic kit? And the coordination is identical. Everything that you're playing, as long as you have the kit set up comfortably and properly, is going to be the same. The only thing you have to take into consideration is, are you playing the same way you play on an acoustic kit? Are you still trying to aim for the center of the head? I find that actually electronic drums are really good for your aim too, because the pads are smaller. So you get used to hitting at a smaller surface, whereas some guys, especially new players, you have such big surfaces to hit on an acoustic kit, and you can tell because the entire head is just totally ravaged the whole way around. When you see a really experienced player, it's usually like just like little sections, and so an acoustic kit actually really helps with your accuracy. The feel is definitely different. You've got mesh, as we've got here, and you've got the rubber pads. Now I find that rubber doesn't feel real, mesh doesn't feel real. They're different. I like the feel of mesh a little bit more because you can tighten it or loosen it. So you can have your high toms a little bit tighter. You can have your floor toms a little looser. You don't want to develop some killer floor tom chops on an electronic kit and then get onto an acoustic kit and you just can't do it because you had them tuned as high as snare drums before. So you definitely want to look out for overdeveloping certain abilities just on the electronic kit. Same with the snare. Like you want the snare to feel like a snare drum. And that's one thing actually that you don't get with the rubber pads is they have the same feel the whole way around, which I find tend to be a little bit more forgiving than on an acoustic kit where it absorbs some of your performance. On the rubber pads, it just bounces right back at you. So it's a great practice tool, but nothing replaces learning the chops on an acoustic kit as well. That's what I find. I have had some guys, usually older guys, comment saying that they started getting severe wrist pain from playing on rubber pads too much. Now, I'm not sure if that's just something that kind of comes with age or arthritis or something like that, but it is something to be wary of. Like when you're playing on an acoustic kit too, like you can do the same thing yourself with an acoustic kit. Like play until if you're feeling pain, stop playing, adjust your technique, as such. But other than that, neither are going to be real. They're going to be slightly different. And my kit at home actually has a mesh snare and then rubber toms, and I think my playing has developed just fine.
Yeah. Well, obviously, it sounds great when you play on the acoustic kit. It doesn't sound like you're only an electric kit player at all.
Thank you. That's good.
Yeah.
That's what I like to hear.
Let's talk about these bottom few here. You got built-in play-alongs, mixing. One thing that I wanted to really get into, and one thing I don't know if anybody utilizes a lot of, but with electric kits, you can plug in your own audio.
Yeah.
And all you need to do with some of the students from Drumeo, they actually even output their audio from the live lessons right into there so they can listen, play along, and practice right along with the lesson as well, with the drumming system, with any kind of product you have. But why don't you give us some obviously, it's pretty simple with the mixing and all that, but...
Yeah, so every kit, I shouldn't say every kit, but every kit that you would find in a store these days is going to have an auxiliary or a mix in, which is going to be either a 1/4 inch or a stereo mini, so an 1/8 inch in. But these days, the music world is finally catching up to technology, and you can now use USB sticks. So a couple of the tracks I was messing around with, and some more that we'll play along to, are actually on the USB stick, and you just plug it in. And this is coming to a lot of kits these days. And then you can actually just access your tracks like kind of like a built-in MP3 player sort of thing. And then you can obviously set the mix. Like since this is the big flagship kit, we've actually got a built-in mixer with faders right on the front, which makes it really, really easy on the fly to adjust. But if you don't have that, like my TD9 at home, you've still got built-in functions on the inside where you scroll through the menu and put the kit volume up and put the track volume down, or vice versa, whatever you like. But it's really, really great for trying to learn to practice to songs and stuff, where you can actually have a cohesive mix all together rather than what some guys will do. Or you're on your acoustic kit and you've got some giant tower speakers just blasting at you, and by the time you've actually learned how to play the whole Green Day song, your ears are bleeding, and
yeah,
I wouldn't be able to do that. So this it's just a really easy way to mix it all together. I've also seen some guys, they'll have 2 sets of headphones. They have the one like the in-ears with the song playing, and then they have their other big over-ear ones with the kit. But that's really uncomfortable. It's just so much sound blasting at you. So the mixer is just really, really handy. Of course, you also have your metronome volume that you can raise and lower, and sometimes ambience too. This one's got a bunch of built-in effects, some EQ, some room mics, and some reverb and echo and stuff like that. But it's really handy. And then you also have, on almost every kit, the ability to record yourself. So you can play, listen back, and see how you did, which is a great function. I found that I didn't really start improving until I started hearing how I was playing, because when you start out, you're like, yeah, I'm awesome. This is great. And you play, and you're like, okay, that was... Or you listen back to the recording, you're like, that was good. But what the heck happened there? I didn't even notice that I did that.
Yeah.
And so now you know to watch for it. Oh, I noticed that I did it. I'm gonna correct it for next time. And you do, and you get better. It's huge. Recording is huge. I think on this one, let's try it on this one.
Sure. I was going to say, I want to hear this kit more. I want you to play some more on this, because
it's just so much
good.
to talk about.
When you're sitting here beside the kit, it's kind of weird because usually you feel the bass drum and you feel the snare going on, but you can't feel it anymore. You just hear it, right? So it's kind of weird. But you're going to record something?
Let's record something.
Perfect.
And it's going to record once I hit the pads. Let's listen to it. yeah, so a few things I would have done better. Try it again, and so on and so forth. So it's pretty cool. You can also you can actually record along to some of the play along tracks, I think. Let's leave that for now, though.
Sure. Play along to a track right now, any play along song, and as you go through it, have it set up on the kit, and I'm going to cycle through some of the presets. I want to hear how it changes.
Okay.
But because I just want to hear this kit, and then show how, because you're going to play the similar similar fill, similar beats that you'd play normally on an acoustic kit. But this is going to be really cool.
Let's find a good track to play along to. Here we go. Nope.
Anyone will work. As long as it's not one of your crazy...
It has to feel good.
It has to
Here we
feel
go.
good.
4/4 groove.
All right, here we
Never
are.
go wrong with that.
Yeah. Awesome.
Too fun.
Yeah, no kidding. Okay, we have a ton of questions, and I know we have a lot more to talk about here too, so I'll let you do that, and we'll get to the questions at the end. We got about 30.
Already?
Yeah, keep going there.
Wow. Okay, one thing that's kind of a cool function about electronic kits is you can change the sensitivity of the pads. So let me demonstrate. Snares at a sensitivity of 7. It's a really good sensitivity. I wouldn't change it, but just in case you want to. Let's crank it. So it's basically feeding everything all the time. You're not getting any subtleties, no matter where you go in the head. That's great if you want to have more of a mechanical, electronic, industrial sound. There's definitely a time and a place for any of that. Mm-hmm. And you have the opportunity to, but we'd put that more back down to 7. I find that comes more into play with aggressive styles of music where you want the kick to just be punching the whole time. So this is, I'm going to go back to a normal kit first. Go back to our good studio kit. Where were we here? There we go. So right now that's at a sensitivity of 8. If we put that all the way to the top, there's no dynamics, it's just in your face the whole time. I wouldn't recommend that if you're practicing trying to get tighter at the double bass, because that's actually going to create the illusion that you're a more powerful player than you are. Mm-hmm. If you really want to hear how you're playing, use the sensitivity tool to your benefit and have it pretty low, and then that's really going to force you to work on your power.
Ah, I see, yep.
So it goes both ways. So it was set at 8 originally, so we'll just leave it at that. Same goes for all the toms, the cymbals. I don't know why you would ever mess with the sensitivity on a cymbal unless you really just want something, again, really electronic or kind of processed feeling.
Yeah.
Again, most kits are going to have ambience. Now, Victor, our audio guru, has already got some ambience on here. I'm just going to... Is it okay if I roll it in real quick?
Yeah, that's fine.
You guys guys notice that?
Yeah.
Really just opens it up. So if you really want that Bryan Adams sound. And then you can also edit that on the fly. So it's really good if you're going for a specific sound. And one reason you would actually want to do that, and one reason why this is really helpful, it's gone, is using the output to record. This kit, again, this is the flagship, so it's got direct outs for all the drums. That's not normal. What you're normally going to get is just a stereo out, so a left and a right. So you can actually do your mix in here, add a little bit of ambience, so a little bit of reverb, mess with the EQ a little bit, maybe some compression. And you actually have a pretty sweet sounding drum mix, and you can record it directly into whatever you're using, you know, Pro Tools with a little M-Box or what have you. So that's, again, a huge benefit of an electronic kit that you're not going to get with an acoustic. With an acoustic kit, you're going to need to drop, you know, a minimum $300 to $400 for a cheap mic set, plus another $100, $150 for cables, and then you're actually finally recording. With this, just out right away, and you're good to go.
Cool.
And again, recording is the way you get better. And also practicing in lessons and, you know, great teachers and stuff like that. But
What about the size of the toms? I know you're saying you can adjust the tension of the feedback, I guess, of each cymbal and mesh head, but can you change the actual size of the toms and all that?
we can edit the drums. This one you can do it a lot more. But with your average electronic drum set, you can still edit them. So let's try to mess with this kit a little bit. Let's see, instrument, there you are. Let's say we want a different sounding snare drum. This is a little bit maybe too bitey. Let's go for something a little bit more dull. That's a maple. That's not what we want. That's a superphonic. There, so a little bit more dry, flat sounding. So that's where we are, but now we can edit that. So that is a mahogany snare drum. Let's change how deep it is. Right now it's set to 5.5 inches deep. Now this is getting a little bit more in depth. Usually you can just change the tone. This is actually changing the depth, which is pretty in depth, no pun intended. So here, 8 inches for your 80s power ballad. You notice it's a very slight change in the timbre. Go up. So that we're back at 5.5. We can change the head type. Or sorry, the head, head type.
I didn't know you could even do that too. That's
You
crazy.
can, and actually this one I guess is fixed. So this one you can't. Most of them you can. So we can mess with the head tuning on this though. And you can crank it as far as you want, really. Don't you wish you could tune your acoustic drums that easily?
Yeah.
Like, seriously.
One spin.
Change the muffling. Right now it's got donuts on it. Right now it's open. See it? A little more overtone. The strainer is set to loose and it's a fixed position, so you actually can't change it. You can change the mic position.
That's
So
insane.
it's so in depth. Your average electronic drum set is going to have tuning up and down and maybe muffling. You're not going to have all that extra insane stuff that this adds, but it's pretty cool to have if you've got the honkin' mamma jamma drum set. We'll switch back to the original stainless. Was that it? Yes, that was it.
Cool.
I have a feeling we have lots of questions.
We do. One thing I wanted to ask when we have this in our points there to talk about how to get used to an electric kit versus acoustic. Is there any kind of exercise that you do, because you play live with an acoustic, if I'm not mistaken?
I do,
And when you go home to practice, is there any rituals or is there any practice exercises that you do when going back and forth to maybe get yourself more used to it? Or
There's no real specific things you do. You just need to be aware of how you play on the different feel and kind of compensate for that. So on my kit at home, where I've got the rubber toms, I just need to remember that there's a lot more bounce from the rubber toms, and so whatever I'm doing on there is going to be a little bit easier than when I take it back to my kit at home. And so you want to keep that in consideration. There's no real actual specific rituals or specific exercises per se I could say you do, except for just to use it for what it is, which is a great practice tool, and in a kit like this case, a great performance tool too, but a great practice tool just to learn your beats, practice whenever you can, and take advantage of all the sweet stuff that's packed into the module here.
cool. Well, let's get into some questions. I will say that I saw the Trans-Siberian Orchestra live, and the drummer plays on a electronic kit, and at the time it was a TD-30 or 20 at the time, but that was the first big stadium gig show. Like, you're doing a stadium gig event and he's playing on an electric kit.
Yeah.
Really cool though. It sounded great. But let's get some questions here. Okay, so starting from the very top, because you guys, this whole idea for this lesson is just to talk about how, the differences between the two, the benefits of an electric drum set. I think they're great to have, and this whole week we're going to do each lesson on this TD-30. So it's going to be a week of lessons, and it's going to be no different than an acoustic kit, and we're just doing that to show you guys that anybody who has an electric kit, you can still learn. And
it's all the same.
It's all the same, and I have some students on there. I know there's some students on there that have practice pad kits as well, and obviously there's no sound coming out of those, but the concepts that you're practicing, exercises and beats that you're doing, they're all the same, Let's start from the very top. Bones says, last Monday's lesson on Latin drumming essentials, I missed it and it's not in the library. That was put in the library a while ago. It's actually lesson number 127, so check in there and see if it's in there. If not, email me, because I saw it in there just a little while ago. Evil Timmy says, this is actually a big one, so I'll paraphrase this one in a bit. Until then, Noodle says, hey Sean, I wasn't sure if the electric kits had much rebound. How do you get the feel of like the heel toe or the slide technique on the bass drum with that mesh pad?
Well, again, with this mesh pad, you can tighten it or loosen it to feel pretty similar to an acoustic bass drum. It's not going to feel exactly the same, and when I first played on a mesh bass drum, it really messed with me, because I find it is fairly bouncy, but you can just, once I realized you can just loosen it, you should be able to more or less pull off the same technique on it. It's just a matter of slightly altering your playing style, but it's going to be mainly actually tightening or loosening the head.
Cool.
Until it feels real.
Evil Timmy, I paraphrased his question. He's exclusively practicing and playing on a V drum set. He wants to know, is there anything that he should know to avoid developing any bad habits when going back and forth between the two? We kind of talked about that a little bit, but
yeah, just make sure that the is it mesh or rubber? If it's rubber, make sure that the kit isn't doing all the rebound work for you, because if you're doing rebound on an acoustic kit, you're going to be working a lot harder for it. So just be aware of that, as well as if you're using a mesh kit, try to have them tuned as realistically as possible, so when you jump on the acoustic kit, it's not such a drastic change. Other than that, also what we talked about with sensitivity, try to try to stay away from the practice of setting up your trigger sensitivity so that it makes life easier for you. You don't really want that. You want it to be as realistic as possible, or sometimes even as challenging as possible, to make you a better player.
Other thing you want to make sure is when you're setting up your electric kit, if you can, try and set it up as identical to your acoustic kit.
Yeah.
If that's possible. I know with the racking system on this one, you obviously can. I've played on some Yamaha basic model kits or TD6, which you just can't bring the toms high enough or move them apart, but do the best you can to set up so it mirrors the setup of your acoustic kit. Even if it looks silly, so I've seen some electric kits that look silly set up so far apart because the pads are so small, but if that's where you're going to be hitting on your acoustic, then why not set it up like that?
That's a great point. Yeah, you don't want to feel completely out of place on an acoustic kit because you're so used to practicing with everything just like all jammed together because it's electronic.
Exactly. He also asks, Evil Timmy says, can you speak of the experience with the different roll and bass drum options / hardware? Wondering how much better the more expensive options are. And I've seen that pad, obviously now that's the biggest one I've seen, but I've also seen ones that actually are attached to the pedal that actually have the pedal that go down all the way to the bottom.
That's the KD7. I don't know if you could even get that one anymore, but that one's pretty sweet for like just triggering sounds and stuff like that. So this is the KD, they've changed the name, but this is the 14-inch. There's also a 12-inch, and I don't know if they're still doing the 10-inch. But the 12-inch was the one that came with the TD20, and I liked it, but I found that there was a bunch of moving parts on it, and it tended to rattle unless you were always kind of tightening it. This one is really, really great. It's all just totally one unit and hasn't rattled once, which is awesome. You also have the KD9, which is the replacement to the rubber pad. It's the small black one. And it's actually a foam pad with sort of a synthetic fiber type material on top of it, which feels so much better than just the old rubber pad. It actually has a little bit of give, sort of like this one does. And again, that's also a great unit. It's all one piece versus the other one, which was held together by screws and would eventually rattle. So they've definitely upped the game with the pads. And if you're getting something current, you're not really going to go wrong. It just depends on the feel that you like and the budget you're working with.
Cool. Tinkata says, the question of an e-kit just came up last week for our church. What would you recommend as a minimum in what to look for as a kit used at least once a week to play along with a small group?
Well, I think if you're using it for church, my experiences with church and church sound is you want the stage volume to be as low as possible. So it would be good to try to get at least some kit with mesh pads because that's going to be a lot quieter than the stick on rubber sound. You're still going to get that on the cymbals, but they're not so rigid. They have some give, and so they don't have that sort of hard crack that the rubber pads have. So you definitely want something with mesh, and if possible, you want direct outs because then the soundman has absolute control over the kit like you would an acoustic kit. And this kit actually, the TD30, this is the TD30 KV. They also offer it in the in a light model. I think it's just the TD30K. So it's the same brain with all the features, but it's just a downgraded pad set. Still all mesh, but it's I think somewhere around, I think we talked about it, like somewhere around like $4,800 rather than $8,000. So that's also a good option for the church.
Yeah, my church, or one of the churches I played for way back when, had a TD6, and that was too low, I think, for it. It had rubber pads. The brain didn't have as much functionality to it, and then the congregation heard the rubber pads more than they heard the drums.
You don't want that.
Yeah, no, not at all. Scott A says this will probably be already answered. The hot spot in the center of the Roland V drums. I just aim slightly high in the center and hope it's not too bad of a habit to get into. What are your thoughts on that?
Slightly high in the center. I guess we're talking about centers here, and you're playing.
Yeah, I guess he's talking about the hot spot of the drum. You're talking about also aiming well and.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing with that. If you know that you're doing it, there's nothing really stopping you from correcting it. As with any acoustic drum, it's still going to sound the best right in that sweet spot in the center. And so if you're aware of it, that's already half the battle. So now you just need to really. It's not necessarily a terrible habit. There are much worse ones out there. But if you know you're doing it,
and if you're consistent, right? If you're
consistent, just move the drum.
Yeah.
You're going to be hitting the center.
Yeah,
really.
That was one of the feedback we gave one of our students too. Sent a video, and they were hitting a little bit too far away from the drum. All we needed to do is move the drum a little bit back.
Move the drum or move your seat, and problem solved.
Tom O'Connell says, is it possible to use the rack that comes with electric drums to mount acoustic toms or cymbals on there? That's a good question.
Looking at this looks identical to the size of the Gibraltar racks and the DW racks. So yeah, you could.
It's a solid metal too. It's not like a plastic rack, so it'll be able to support it.
It's tough. It's literally probably the same stuff. The only thing is, I don't know what the price point is like for just buying the rack itself. It might not be too cost effective, but you definitely can.
Yeah. Cool. Phoenix 127 says, I had a TD9 with mesh heads and upgraded with the TD15 module. It's fantastic for the bands I play with. So much more responsive. Yeah, it'll do a lot because I believe the new models now, the 15 and the 30 both come with supernatural.
Supernatural behavioral sound modeling.
Yes, and William Young says, I'm curious about the supernatural sound processing, and can you really hear the difference? Also, what is the impact of position triggering when you're playing? Let's talk about the supernatural feel. Do you notice a difference already?
Hugely. It's all over the drums, but I first noticed it. We got a TD15 in, it was the first one in Canada, and it arrived at my store, and I set it up right away like a little boy Christmas morning. And I noticed it right off the bat on the cymbals. The cymbals, they don't just spit out the same sample as fast as you play it. Like, they actually start to swell, right? Like. So depending on the way that you're playing, it's actually going to be calculating different sounds different ways. And I find that the cymbals just sound more rich because they're not like stacking the same sound over top of each other, which starts to sound thin after a while. Mm-hmm. It becomes an actual one big kind of cymbal sound. So you definitely notice that on the cymbals, on the TD30 as well as the TD15, and a little bit on the TD11. With the snare's pretty cool. It's pretty sensitive, but I'm gonna hit in the center and I'm gonna move out to the outside, and you're gonna notice it's gonna totally change. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that is. Play us just some beats and grooves with some texturized stuff so we can hear how it sounds.
Let's do it. So even with the toms, you can tell like you're hitting by the rim versus in the center. So it's pretty cool. You can be really expressive. That wasn't a very good example because, you know, on the fly, but you can be really, really expressive.
Well, we have the TD20 in the other room there, and already like just practicing on that compared to this, there's no real comparison. It seems like it's quite a big difference. But anyway, there's also lots of other different kits too. There's the Alesis out there. There's the Box 2. I don't know if you've heard about that one.
2-box?
2-box, sorry.
Yeah.
And there's also the, there's also Yamaha makes a couple different kinds of Alesis. So there's a lot of different options out there for you, and all of them make higher end and lower end models.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some pretty nice kits out there.
Simon Stewart says, hey, Dave and Sean. Happy anniversary to Sean, by the way. Apparently, he remembers. I didn't even know that. Sorry.
You remember it.
Yeah. I have the Roland TD8 module with using a TD20 drum mesh heads and the KD120. I don't know those model numbers.
KD120, that's the 12-inch mesh pad, I think, for the kit.
Yeah. And he's... and it's best kit for practicing at night. Have you ever tried using the Roland FriendJam with the TD30 kit? It's an awesome tool for creating new ideas, play-alongs on your own songs.
I haven't used that yet. I've seen it demoed a few times, and that is pretty sweet, actually. Yeah, FriendJam, you can play along to songs and kind of like grade your score against other people in the world and your friends, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah. Bobby Davis says, did you look into the other kits or just the TD30 and also the Alesis DM10 any count? I'm pretty sure you meant, have you tried any other kits? And I've tried a lot of them. Actually, Yamaha has a really cool, the new pads on Yamaha's are nice and
Yeah, Yamaha's new kits are pretty sweet. They've kind of got that silicone pad. The one thing that I find makes them not quite unequal to a mesh pad is that you can't tune them. You can't change the feel. They're pretty much just as is, whereas a mesh pad, you can tighten it or loosen it. But again, mesh pad doesn't feel like the real thing. Silicone pad, that Yamaha doesn't feel like the real thing. So whatever feels best for you is the one that you should get.
And you can actually adjust the tension of those with the drum key, almost like a real
with the drum
hammer.
key. Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Vander Waden says, do you use different drumsticks on a V kit versus an acoustic kit? Very good question.
Very common question too. There's no need to really, except for size-wise. Like if you're a 2B player, use 2Bs. You're going to feel more comfortable. Just make sure you're not like smashing the crap out of your drums. Nylon tip versus wood tip, it's not going to make any difference sound-wise like it normally would on an acoustic kit. It's just the rebound is going to be slightly different. But I find that's not really a necessary thing that you need to do. If you like nylon sticks or nylon tip sticks, use them on the kit. If you like wood tip sticks, use them on the kit. But it's not really going to be making any sort of profound change in the sound or your playing.
What if you have sticks that you're using on your acoustic kit that you've chopped up quite a bit from rim shots and from cymbals? Do you want to use those on an electric kit? Because I know sometimes people just grab the first pair of sticks from their bag.
Yeah. If they feel good, sure.
But is there any risk of the splinters coming off and poking through the mesh? That's my fear, especially when I have a couple frays coming off and I go to play an electric kit. I always get so scared that it's going to poke right into the mesh.
Never happened to me. I'm sure, there's that one freak time where it's going to happen, but on my 5 years of playing on my electronic kits, it never happened.
It's never happened, eh?
No.
Good to know. Jason says, this is an awesome kit, but it's top of the line, so it should be awesome. And that's a good point. What should be a small, effective V kit for someone who just wants to use it more for a practice tool, not for an instrument?
It depends on your budget, but if you're looking at just a practice tool, Yamaha and Roland both have lower budget entry-level kits. Yamaha's DT Explorer comes in at $700 roughly, but you just get the same rubber pad for the hi-hat and the snare and all the toms. So if you find that that's really not good enough, then you can move up to the Roland TD11, which I think they're going for $1,000 now. You get a mesh snare, you get a hi-hat pad. It's not going to be open and closed like this, but you get a hi-hat pad, and then you get the rubber toms, and that starts at $1,000. And you can upgrade that to all mesh for I think $15.99, $16.99, somewhere around there. So that's probably what you want to be looking at. Or you could even catch some of the discontinued TD4s. They're usually getting blown out or getting sold to use on Craigslist for quite a bit cheaper.
And Pearl makes one called the E-Pro kit. It's one that's a mixture of acoustic and it's a hybrid, I guess you'd say.
It's a pretty cool looking kit.
Yeah.
We've had a couple of those in the store, and they look really cool, and they don't necessarily play that great, but it's just the whole visual aspect that makes it feel... It still makes it feel good, even though by itself it's not really anything special. It's actually, I'm pretty sure it's actually just an Alesis DM10, but just rebranded, made red, and they call it the red box instead of the Alesis DM10. So all the sounds are fairly similar. So sounds aren't really that great, but it's just the visual aspect of having a real kit in front of you, and it just feels more real. So it's pretty cool.
And if you wanted to, you could put acoustic heads on there. And
you can put
play
acoustic heads on there, and I think they're also selling the electronic pads just as is that you can put on your acoustic kit now.
Cool.
Yeah,
Very
pretty
cool.
cool.
Now, here's a question here from Scott A. Says, Roland specific, how tight are your V-drum heads? Thanks. He has a TD15.
I like to keep them... I like it fairly tight on the snare, as long as it's not doing any work for me. I like the higher toms tuned a little bit down from the snare because you want it to feel real, and I like the floor tom actually fairly loose. These are actually fairly tight. They're just stock. I haven't actually loosened them yet, but normally I try to recreate the tension of an acoustic kit. So pretty tight for the snare because I like a tight snare. If you like a loose snare, go loose. Tighter on the toms, fairly loose and sloppy on the floor toms.
Cool. Here's a question for both of us. This one's from Ryan the Lion 94. It says, what do you guys prefer, acoustic or electric?
I prefer acoustic just because it's the age-old guy hitting a drum. But you need both. I feel you need both because you need one to be able to practice when no one wants you to practice, and then you need one to put on stage that looks totally badass that you can play on a mic up and do the real thing. So I think you need both. But if I had a gun pointed to my head, I'd go with the acoustic.
Yes, I agree. I love the acoustic. Just textures and stuff that you can't really get out of yet, even with the supernatural feel. I told Audio Victor in the back, I says, I'm going to try and get this kit to surprise me and trick me because I was just not going to look. I was just going to listen to the mix come through. I wanted to see if I could tell if it was an acoustic kit or an electric kit, and I could still tell. But so there's still a lot of things that it can't do, little nuances that an electric or an acoustic kit could have. But I agree, it's great to have both. And
one thing that you can do as well as you can mix and match. It's really common these days for producers to bring in an electronic kit like this and then use real cymbals, because cymbals, they really, really add to that feel of realness. It's totally different from hitting rubber. It just, you know, that feels totally different. Wood on metal versus wood on rubber. So mix and match, add toms to your... actually, some guys, some of my regular customers will actually have a electronic kit and have a real snare because they just like the feel of the real snare, but everything else is electronic. So,
well, on the Trans-Siberian Orchestra show that I went to, I think it was John Riley, I think is the drummer, but he had all acoustic cymbals up there with the electric pads on the kit. And I thought obviously it's because they have a whole orchestra there and the stage volume is too much. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people. Mike McAlco's big, huge drum kit that he has, his monstrosity of a kit. He's got electric pads on there as well.
Yeah.
Neil Peart, if you look at his solo, I mean, he turns around, he's got a Roland kit on there as well. Ange says, is it wise to put a patch pad on the kick mesh head?
It's not really gonna stick. I mean, it might. I'd be impressed if it did, but you don't really need to do that as long as you're using proper beaters. We're actually using specific Roland beaters because if you use felt, it actually starts to eat away at the drum skin. No joke. That's actually what happens. I didn't realize that for the longest time.
So you would obviously recommend a plastic beater for any mesh head electric kit.
Plastic or wooden or something that's not spongy and porous like felt, because it actually does start to eat away. You can really notice this on the rubber pads actually. It actually starts to dig a groove in. It just literally erodes it, but it'll do it on this pad too. So you don't really need the pad, just use the proper beaters.
Cool. Every time I refresh this page, there's like another 6 or 7 questions. And right now there's 16 new ones that I haven't even looked at, and we're still not even halfway done. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through a few more of these questions, guys. Obviously, today's more of just a Q&A almost around this electric kit. This whole week's lesson is going to be on the electric drum. So if we don't get your question answered today, please come around for the next couple lessons, because there's going to be tons of time and opportunity to ask us. And during the week lessons, we make sure every question is answered. Also, I'd love for you to play us out too.
Sure.
Especially because I've only heard a little bit of this kit and I would just love to hear more of it. So let's go through a few more questions. Maybe you can play us out.
Yeah.
Sounds good?
Absolutely.
Okay, X-Hammer says, could you review some different drum software packages maybe on a future lesson? You know what? Let's leave that one for a future lesson, because I think I'm going to work on getting one of these kits in here for some future lessons as well, because I think there's so much you can do and teach on this. And there's a lot of members out there that have electric drum sets. William Young says, when playing live, would you use the ambience from the kit or just the natural sound of the venue?
Totally, yeah. Ambience would because some venues don't have any ambience. Some venues are just a hole in the wall. And so having the ambience is a plus. Like people will pay a lot of money to add that to their rack, their whole sound setup. So if it comes built in, totally use it.
Exactly. Mikey 2012 says, can you use different parts from different kits on each pad? For example, the 70 snare on a stage bass drum, or can you only have the presets set up?
Almost every electronic kit comes with a bunch of the presets, and it usually comes with empty presets, which you can create yourself. But you can always go into the presets and totally mess around with the presets themselves and change them up. So yeah, absolutely. You could have the awesomest kit ever if you wanted to, if you choose all the best sounds in the brain. Mm-hmm. You don't need to stick to a 70s kit versus bop kit or whatever. Cool.
DrumJack52 says, can you recommend a good monitor system for an E-kit?
Roland has a pretty sweet system. I think it's called there's so many. There's like the PM3, there's the PM10. One of them comes with a bass unit and then also satellite speakers that pop up, so you get the whole stereo sound. If you just use a keyboard amp, it's a lot cheaper and it works well, but it's only mono. And drums are a stereo instrument. You've got left and right. They're almost like a surround instrument because you're literally surrounded by drums. So the satellite speakers are nice. You can also just use like if you have a good home stereo system, you can use that too. You just might blow it if you're cranking the volume on there. Sorry to keep going, but even a PA system. A PA system would be a great monitor system for an electronic drum set, and then you can crank it and make it as loud as a real kit.
Shure E2s work as well.
They do.
That's what we're using.
That's what I use.
This one's from Noodle. It says, "Hey Sean and Dave, great job on the lesson. Thanks, man. I have an acoustic kit, but I was thinking of adding some electric drums to it. Is this a good idea?" We just were talking about that. It's a great idea.
It is a good idea.
Yeah.
Do it.
Just make sure everything's mixed well. That's the hardest part about it, I think, is making sure that what the people hear or what you hear is the same volume as your cymbal. If you have a crash cymbal and an electric cymbal and you hit one and then you hit the other and they can tell the difference, that's just not uniform and it's not going to sound well. It's going to sound like two different instruments.
Another good way to go is many brands, well, mainly Yamaha and Roland, have these like multi-pads out. So they'll have between 9 and 12 areas, which are all different triggers. So you can add that to your kit, and you already have like basically a brain built in, and you can add a couple more triggers to that. So if you don't want to scatter them around your kit, you have a little miniature electronic drum kit right here, and then you can also add a few more pads around the kit as well. And that's actually a fairly inexpensive way to go. Those start at like $600 or $700, rather than buying a whole kit and adding that to your acoustic kit.
Awesome. JK says, would the cymbals break if you hit them as hard as you would an acoustic kit?
In most cases, no. It depends, though. If you're really, really trying to break them, you can break them. Same with acoustic cymbals. So as long as you're hitting them properly and not just like destroying them, they'll do fine.
I've seen more acoustic cymbals break than electric. I've never seen one of those kind of cymbals break.
No.
But I have seen the cheaper models that have plastic and then some rubber pad. I've seen them lose their sensitivity.
They will lose their sensitivity, and that's if you're really beating them up, though. With an electronic drum set, you don't need to smash it to get sound out of it.
No. And that's part of the process of an electric kit, learning to play it softer. And it actually really helps your dynamic level, too, when you realize that
Definitely.
playing on that. I mean, I watch you play acoustic kits, and you use a lot of energy doing it, but you don't hit very hard. And I think a lot of that's from your practice on an electric kit.
I used to play really, really hard. I used to break things a little bit more. The acoustic the electronic kit really kind of reins you in a little bit, which in most cases is good. Sometimes you want that extra burst of energy, and you're just not used to expelling that. But in most cases, it's good because you don't want to be killing everyone or killing everyone's ears who's listening to your drum.
Perfect. Okay, there's a lot more questions in here. We're going to have to get to those another time because we're running out of time here. But I do have one last one from Daniel J. Jones. He actually couldn't make it to this lesson, and he was really bummed about it, and he had some questions about...
That's too bad. He bought a TD-15.
I know.
Yeah.
Nice kit. Actually, he posted a video of him playing on it, too.
Oh, nice.
Anyway, the questions that he had was, this is one that I think we've discussed already. Is there a way to turn the snare wires off on your snare drum on here?
There is, yep.
Pretty simple. I guess it would probably be in the same setting as when you're adjusting the tuning and all that.
It's in the strainer, so we can even do that right now for fun, if I can find it real quickly here. Edit that. This is going to take too long, so we're not going to do it. But it's possible, and you can do it with most electronic drum sets.
Okay. He says, can't find one, so I made a kit up with 10 rototoms assigned to the snare. Kind of works. He has a TD-15, so I know it can work because I used to do it on the TD-8, I believe. Yeah. So Daniel, I know it works. Just got to figure out how to do it. Is it okay to use wood tips, brushes, or roots on the kit? We were talking about brushes already. But
yep. This kit will actually do brushes. It's okay on a TD-15 and a TD-11, what have you, but it's not going to pick it up as well as one that's meant to do it like the TD-30.
Cool. He has one last question, but it's way too in-depth. He says, this one might be a little bit too big to ask, but how do you trigger laptop MIDI sounds from your electric kit? And that's like a whole topic.
You YouTube it.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Google and YouTube it, because there's lots of tutorials.
Yeah. And you do triggering with your bass drum, and you bring an actual module when you
Yep.
do that kind of stuff. And I've actually, who was it in the chat? Mondo? Somebody in one of our, not in the chat, sorry, in the forums posted a video of him playing on one of the basic practice. Like, what's the absolute basic Roland kit that has the 2 built-in pedals?
The HD1
That's
or the
it.
HD3, which just got released. Yeah.
Yeah, he was playing on that, but for some reason it sounded so good, and he was obviously using triggers or triggering it. But anyway, Sean, you mind playing us out?
Yeah. What should we do? Should we do a built-in loop on here, or should we do a song?
Let's do a built-in loop on here.
Cool.
Because you've done a lot of your 7-year storm. So let's try a loop on there. Have fun with it. Do whatever you want. Thanks again for coming out, everyone. For all who didn't get their answers or questions answered, please, if you're a member of Drum, you'll come out for the next lessons that we're doing. This whole week's on this electric kit, and it was a lot of fun seeing how it sounds.
Also, the Drumeo forum as well. Hop on there. Ask a question addressed to any one of us, and we'll get on there and answer it.
Yeah, sounds good. All right, I'll see you guys all tomorrow. Thanks again, Sean, and good luck with the play along.
Thank you.